They built a mansion on my land while I was halfway across the world, betting I'd never notice. A sprawling, three-story monstrosity with a pool and a four-car garage, all on the forest I inherited from my granddad. I found out the hard way when I got back to the States after 3 years in Japan, jet-lagged and dreaming of the quiet woods I'd loved as a kid, only to see her directing landscapers like she owned the place. Spoiler, she didn't. I did. And here's the kicker. I could flip a switch and leave her dream house in the dark. Literally. Hey, if you're new here, drop a comment below. Tell me what you'd do if someone snatched your property right under your nose. I'm Jake Carter, by the way, and this mess started 6 months ago when I stepped off a plane at Charlotte Douglas Airport, North Carolina, ready to see the 12 acres granddad left me in his will. I'd been managing a tech project in Osaka, locked into a 3-year gig with zero time to check on things back home. Big mistake. The letter came on a muggy August morning in 2024, just before I flew back. I was in my cramped Osaka apartment, slurping instant ramen, when the mail slid under my door. Inside was a yellowed envelope from Granddad's lawyer, Tom Grayson, with a deed to 12 acres of woodland outside Pineville, a sleepy town 20 miles south of Charlotte. My hand shook as I traced the official stamp. Holy crap, I muttered, spilling soy sauce on my shirt. I own land. Real, honest-to-God dirt and trees. Granddad used to take me there every summer, fishing in the creek, building rickety forts out of fallen branches. It was our spot. My boss, Greg, wasn't thrilled when I asked for a week off before the contract wrapped. You just signed on for another year, Jake, he grumbled over Zoom, his tie crooked as usual. This better be quick. I promised it would be. I just needed to see it, touch the soil, smell the pines, before locking myself into another overseas stint. So I rented a beat-up Ford Escape and drove out from Charlotte, GPS barking directions through winding back roads until I hit a gravel path swallowed by oaks and maples. A faded sign in Granddad's jagged handwriting read Carter property, keep out. Beyond it, the forest stretched wide and wild, hugging the edge of a fancy neighborhood called Willow Creek Estates. I parked and hiked in, the air thick with cicadas and nostalgia. That's when I saw the survey markers, rusted stakes with neon green caps Granddad had shown me when I was 12. These are yours one day, Jake, he'd said, ruffling my hair. I grinned, snapping a photo for Instagram, until I heard the buzz of a hedge trimmer. An older guy in a straw hat waved from a yard backing up to my woods. You must be Ed Carter's grandson, he called, wiping sweat off his brow. I'm Bill Harper. Your granddad was a legend, never sold out, no matter how much they offered. Sold out to who? I asked, shaking his calloused hand. Bill nodded toward the McMansions peeking through the trees. Willow Creek HOA. Been itching to expand for years, more houses, maybe a tennis court. They've had their eye on this land forever. Watch out for Lisa Bennett, though. She's the vice president and doesn't like hearing no. I laughed it off. Good thing I'm not selling either, I said. Bill smirked. Hope you mean that. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Japan, leaving the property with a local management company, Pineville Realty, to check on it every few months. I figured that'd be enough. I was wrong. Fast forward 3 years to August 2024. I'm back in North Carolina, dragging my suitcase down that same gravel path, expecting to find my forest untouched. Instead, I hear chainsaws. My stomach drops as I push through the underbrush, following the noise. That's when I see it, a half-finished mansion smack in the middle of my land. Workers are nailing up drywall, landscapers hauling in sod, and a woman with a platinum bob and designer sunglasses is yelling at a truck driver about where to dump a pile of white pebbles. Excuse me, I shout, jogging over. What's going on here? She turns, her lips pursed like I'm a bug on her windshield. This is a private construction site on private property, she snaps. And you are. I stick out my hand, forcing a smile. Jake Carter, the owner of this land. You must be Lisa Bennett. Her sunglasses slip down her nose, revealing sharp green eyes. How do you know my name? She asks, ignoring my hand. Bill Harper mentioned you. Said you've been eyeing this spot for a while. Her smirk fades fast. This parcel was legally purchased from Willow Creek HOA 6 months ago, she says, crossing her arms. I have the paperwork. That's funny, I shoot back, because I never sold it to anyone. She laughs, a cold, brittle sound. The boundary lines were adjusted while you were gone. This is HOA common area now, and I bought it fair and square. Take it up with our president, Steve Larson, if you don't like it. She turns away, barking at a worker about window trim, leaving me standing there, fist clenched. As the truth sinks in, they stole my land, and they think they're getting away with it. That night, I'm pacing my rented Airbnb in Pineville, digging through Granddad's old property maps on my laptop. The deed's GPS coordinates match the forest I remember, not this cleared patch with Lisa's dream house. I call a surveyor, paying double for a rush job. 3 days later, he confirms it. Someone moved the boundary markers 150 feet into my property. That mansion? 100% mine. As I stare at the report, my phone buzzes. It's a text from an unknown number. Leave it alone, or you'll regret it. LB. I glance out the window toward the construction site, where floodlights burn late into the night, and I realize this isn't just about land anymore. It's personal. Across town, Lisa's sipping Pinot Grigio on her unfinished patio, texting Steve Larson about that annoying Carter kid. She doesn't know I've already got my next move planned, and it's going to light up her world in all the wrong ways. I couldn't sleep that night. The hum of construction equipment echoed through my Airbnb's thin walls, mocking me. Every nail they hammered into my land felt like a jab to my chest. Granddad's woods, where he taught me to skip rocks and spot deer tracks, were being shredded for Lisa Bennett's ego palace. I wanted to scream, to march over there and rip the blueprints out of her manicured hands. But I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who fights smart. And by dawn, I had a plan that'd make her wish she'd never crossed me. I'm Jake Carter, still reeling from finding a mansion on my 12 acres of inherited forest outside Pineville, North Carolina. Lisa, the Willow Creek HOA vice president, thinks she's untouchable, but she's about to learn I've got a wild card up my sleeve. The surveyor's report was my first win, proof her house sits 150 feet over my line. But proof alone doesn't stop bulldozers. I needed leverage, something to hit her where it hurts. So I dug deeper, fueled by coffee and fury, and stumbled across a goldmine in Granddad's old files, electrical easement rights. See, back in the 80s, Granddad sold a sliver of those rights to the local power company, Duke Energy, with a sneaky little clause, heirs got first dibs if they ever went up for grabs again. I raced to the Mecklenburg County Records office that morning, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. The clerk, a sweet older lady named Nancy with a southern drawl thick as molasses, squinted at the screen. Well, I'll be, she said, adjusting her glasses. Duke restructured in 2010, and these easements have been sitting dormant. Available to you, Mr. Carter, if you've got the cash. Cash? I had my savings, $42,000 squirreled away for a rainy day. This wasn't rain. This was a freaking hurricane. How much? I asked, voice tight. $38,000, she replied. I swallowed hard. That was my safety net, my maybe I'll buy a house one day fund. But as I stood there, picturing Lisa's smug face and those ancient pines she'd already felled, I knew it wasn't even a choice. Do it, I said, signing the papers with a shaky hand. 6 hours later, I owned the electrical easement rights to Willow Creek Estates. Translation? I could control the power to her precious neighborhood, including her half-built mansion. Meanwhile, across town, Lisa was sipping coffee on her temporary deck, scrolling Zillow like she'd already won. She had no clue I'd just bought the key to her lights, her AC, her whole shiny life. That afternoon, I called my lawyer, Sarah Brooks, a no-nonsense woman I'd found through a Google search for HOA dispute Charlotte. Jake, this is insane, she said, her voice crackling over the phone. You've got the deed, the survey, and now this easement trump card. What's the play? Simple, I said, pacing my tiny rental kitchen. We tell them to tear it down, or I cut the juice. Sarah drafted a notice that evening. Lisa Bennett and Willow Creek HOA have 30 days to remove all structures from my property and restore the land, or I'll authorize indefinite electrical maintenance, disconnecting power to your grid section. I grinned as she emailed it to me. It was polite, legal, and a total gut punch. The next morning, I watched from my car as a courier delivered copies to Lisa's construction site, Steve Larson's HOA office, and every board member's doorstep. Lisa's face when she ripped open the envelope? Priceless. Her jaw dropped, and she immediately dialed someone, probably Steve, yelling into her phone as workers paused to stare. Back at my place, I got a call from Bill Harper, the neighbor who'd warned me about Lisa. Jake, they're freaking out over here, he said, chuckling. Saw Lisa storm into Steve's house like a tornado. You really stirred the hive. Good, I replied, my pulse racing. Let's see how they like playing defense. But that night, my phone buzzed with a new text. You're messing with the wrong people. Back off. SL, Steve Larson, I figured. I stared at the screen, the glow lighting up my clenched jaw. They thought they could scare me? Granddad didn't raise a quitter. By day 3, construction kicked into overdrive. They were racing to finish Lisa's house, floodlights blazing 24/7, noise rattling my skull. I called the cops about it, twice. "Sorry, sir," the officer said, shifting uncomfortably in his boots. "Willow Creek's got a special permit. Nothing we can do." I slammed the phone down, fury boiling over. That's when Bill showed up at my door, eyes wide. "They're cutting down the big sycamores now," he said. "The ones by the creek." My heart sank. Those trees were 80 years old, Granddad's favorites. I grabbed my jacket and ran. I got there just as a chainsaw bit into the last sycamore. The crack of splintering would hit me like a slap. Lisa stood nearby, arms crossed, smirking. "Such a shame," she called over the noise. "Old trees can be dangerous, you know." I wanted to yell, to demand she stop, but I froze, watching that giant crash down, sap bleeding into the dirt. "This isn't over," I said, voice low but steady. She laughed. "Keep dreaming, kid." That was it. The gloves were off. I called Sarah. "File the injunction," I said, "and get Duke Energy on the line. They want war. They're getting it." The air crackled with tension as I stood on my Airbnb porch, watching the sun dip below the pines. 3 weeks into my 30-day ultimatum, and Lisa Bennett's mansion was nearly done, marble countertops gleaming through the windows, a pool pump humming like it was mocking me. I'd given them time, too much, maybe, but they'd spent it building faster, not backing down. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts from unknown numbers. "You'll lose everything, Carter. Think about your future." I deleted them all, my blood boiling. They thought I'd fold. They didn't know me at all. I'm Jake Carter, fighting to reclaim the 12 acres of forest my granddad left me outside Pineville, North Carolina. Lisa, the Willow Creek HOA vice president, built her dream house on my land while I was stuck in Japan for 3 years. Now, armed with a fresh survey, Granddad's deed, and the electrical easement rights I'd just bought for $38,000, I was ready to strike. Sarah Brooks, my lawyer, had filed an emergency injunction to stop construction, but the judge, some buddy of Steve Larson's, I'd bet, denied it. "They've got deep pockets and deeper connections," Sarah warned over the phone. "But we've got the law. And Duke Energy." That morning, I called my contact at Duke, a guy named Mike Torres. "Jake, you sure about this?" he asked, his voice hesitant. "Shutting off power's a big move. They've had 21 days to start tearing it down," I said, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. They chose to call my bluff. "Make it happen." Mike sighed. "All right. Crews rolling out at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Northeast grid section. 5 houses, including Bennett's and Larson's. You're the easement owner. It's your call." I hung up, heart pounding. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about Granddad's legacy, about every summer I'd spent in those woods, now paved over for Lisa's vanity. Across town, Lisa was hosting a pre-housewarming brunch on her unfinished patio. I could see the glow of string lights from my rental, hear the clink of glasses as she toasted with Steve and their HOA cronies. "To progress," she'd probably said, oblivious to the storm I was brewing. Meanwhile, Bill Harper, my neighbor ally, texted me updates. "They're laughing about you over there. Say you're some city kid who'll cave." I smirked, typing back. "Let's see who's laughing tomorrow." Dawn broke humid and gray on day 22. I stood by my car, sipping burnt gas station coffee, watching Duke's trucks rumble down Willow Creek's pristine streets. At 9:01 a.m., Mike called. "We're live. Power's going down in 3, 2. The line went silent, and then it happened. One by one, lights flickered out across the northeast corner. Lisa's mansion went dark first, those fancy chandeliers dimming to nothing. Then Steve's colonial, 3 others. I could almost hear the gasps from half a mile away. My chest tightened with a mix of triumph and dread. This was real now. By 9:30, my phone exploded. "Steve, turn it back on now." "Lisa, you'll pay for this, you little punk." I ignored them, but the chaos was just starting. News vans rolled into Willow Creek by 10. Cameras catching Lisa storming out in a silk robe, yelling at a worker about her dead AC. "It's 92 degrees, she screeched, her perfect hair frizzing in the humidity. I watched from my porch, trying not to laugh, when Sarah pulled up in her Prius. "They're losing it," she said, grinning. "HOA's called an emergency meeting tonight. You're invited." The Willow Creek Community Center was packed that evening, board members up front, residents fanning themselves with agendas in the unair-conditioned room. Steve, red-faced and sweating through his polo, banged a gavel. "We've got a situation," he started, voice shaking. Lisa jumped up, pointing at me in the back. "This is blackmail. He's cut our power." The crowd murmured, head swiveling. Sarah stood beside me, cool as ice. "It's not blackmail, it's property law. My client owns the land and the easement rights. You've had weeks to fix this." An older woman with sharp blue eyes, Mary Ellis, I'd later learn, stood up. "What's this about our electricity?" she demanded. I stepped forward, adrenaline surging. "Your HOA moved my boundary markers while I was overseas, sold my land to Lisa, and built on it. I gave them 30 days to remove it. They didn't. So I authorized maintenance that requires a power cut, to their grid only." The room erupted. Steve tried to shout over it, but Mary cut in. "You're saying they stole from you?" "Exactly," I said, meeting Lisa's glare. She looked ready to lunge, but Steve yanked her back, whispering furiously. Outside, as dusk settled, Lisa's husband, Brad, cornered me in the parking lot. He was a stocky guy with a permanent scowl. "You're screwing with the wrong people," he growled, stepping close. "We've got friends in high places." I didn't flinch. "And I've got the deed, the survey, and the power switch. Back off." He stormed away, tires squealing, while Mary watched from the steps. She nodded slightly, like she was sizing me up and maybe picking a side. Back at my rental, I couldn't sit still. The silence from Lisa's dark mansion was deafening. No pool pumps, no floodlights. Just crickets. My phone buzzed again. "Sarah. They're filing for an injunction to force the power back on. Hearings tomorrow." "We've got this, Jake, but it's gonna get uglier." I looked out at the blackened houses, my resolve hardening. Ugly? Bring it on. They'd taken my granddad's woods. I'd take their comfort, and I wasn't stopping until every brick of that house was gone. The next morning hit like a freight train. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing off the nightstand, texts, emails, voicemails piling up like angry hornets. Lisa's latest: "You're a dead man walking, Carter." Steve's: "See you in court today. You're finished." I rolled out of bed, adrenaline spiking, and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection stared back, tired, scruffy, but ready. They'd stolen my granddad's land, turned his woods into their playground, and now they were scrambling because I'd flipped the script. Today, they'd learn I don't bluff. I'm Jake Carter, still locked in the showdown with Willow Creek HOA over the 12 acres outside Pineville, North Carolina. Lisa Bennett's mansion sits on my property, and yesterday, I cut the power to her grid, hers, Steve Larson's, and 3 others, using the electrical easement rights I'd snagged for $38,000. The news was everywhere now. Channel 9 had a van parked at Willow Creek's entrance, a reporter named Kelly Sanders catching residents' complaints. "No AC in this heat. My groceries are rotting." I almost felt bad, almost. Then I remembered the sycamores they'd chainsawed down, and my guilt evaporated. Sarah Brooks met me at the Mecklenburg County Courthouse at 10 a.m., her briefcase stuffed with our arsenal, the deed, the survey, the easement docs. "They're desperate," she said, adjusting her blazer. "Their injunction claims irreparable harm. Judge Whitaker's presiding. He's fair, but Steve's brother-in-law golfs with him, so stay sharp." I nodded, my stomach twisting as we walked into the courtroom. Lisa sat up front, her platinum hair pulled tight, whispering to their lawyer, a slick guy named Paul Evans. Steve fidgeted beside her, sweat stains blooming under his arms. The room buzzed with tension, residents in the gallery, some glaring at me, others just curious. Judge Whitaker, a gray-haired man with a no-nonsense stare, banged his gavel. "Let's keep this civil," he said. Paul jumped up, voice dripping with drama. "Mr. Carter's actions are punitive and illegal. He's holding 5 families hostage over a petty dispute." Sarah didn't flinch. "It's not a dispute, it's theft," she fired back, sliding our docs across the bench. "The HOA falsified boundaries, sold my client's land, and built on it. He owns the easement rights and authorized maintenance. Perfectly legal." Whitaker skimmed the papers, his brow furrowing. "This survey's damning," he muttered. "Why wasn't this caught sooner?" Paul stammered, but Lisa cut in, her voice shrill. "He's a nobody trying to ruin us." Whitaker shot her a look that could have frozen lava. "Mrs. Bennett, sit down." My chest tightened. This was it. After 20 minutes of back and forth, Whitaker ruled. "Injunction denied. Mr. Carter's within his rights. Settle this out of court, or I'll see you back here with bigger problems." Lisa's face went scarlet. Steve looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. I exhaled, shaky but victorious. Outside, the courthouse steps swarmed with cameras. Kelly Sanders shoved a mic in my face. Why'd you cut the power, Jake? I kept it simple. They took my land. I gave them 30 days to fix it. They didn't. Her eyes lit up. Great soundbite. Meanwhile, Lisa stormed past, Brad trailing her, barking at Paul about escalating this. I caught Mary Ellis watching from the crowd, her silver hair glinting in the sun. She gave me a thumbs up, and I felt a spark of hope. Maybe I wasn't alone in this. Back at Willow Creek, the fallout was instant. By noon, Lisa's mansion sat dark and silent. No workers, no noise. Bill Harper called, voice buzzing with excitement. Jake, you should see it. They've got portable fans running off generators, but Lisa's flipping out, her pool pump's dead, and the heat's melting her makeup. I laughed, picturing it, but the joy faded fast. My phone pinged with an email from Paul. Settlement offer, $50,000 to sell the disputed acre. Tempting, sure, but it wasn't about money. It was about Granddad's woods, about right and wrong. That night, the HOA called another emergency meeting. The community center was a sauna, 200 residents packed in, fanning themselves with flyers. Steve took the podium, his tie loose. We're working on a solution, he lied, avoiding my gaze. Lisa wasn't there. Rumor was she'd hired movers, maybe bailing already. Mary Ellis stood up, her voice cutting through the chatter. I've lived here 25 years. If Jake's right, and those papers say he is, our board's been lying to us. How many other lines have they moved? The room exploded. Steve tried to shout over it, but a guy in the back, Tom Reynolds, I'd learn later, yelled, What else are you hiding, Larson? I stood, heart racing. I don't want your power off forever, I said, loud enough to hush them. I want my land back. Tear down the house, restore the forest, and we're done. Murmurs rippled, some nods, some glares. Sarah leaned close. They're cracking, Jake. Keep the pressure on. As we left, Mary caught my arm. They bullied the Wilsons out of their garden plot 3 years ago, she whispered. Same playbook. You're shaking things up. I grinned, exhausted, but fired up. The tide was turning. Across town, Lisa sat in her dim living room, generator humming, texting Steve, we need to crush him. But at my rental, I stared at Granddad's old map, tracing the creek where we'd fished. They could fight all they wanted. I had the law, the truth, and a growing army of fed-up neighbors. One way or another, that house was coming down. The sun was barely up, but I was already on my porch, coffee in hand, staring at the dark silhouette of Lisa Bennett's mansion. Day 29 of my ultimatum, and the air felt electric, not from power lines, but from the chaos I'd unleashed. Willow Creek HOA was crumbling, and I could taste victory. My phone buzzed. Sarah Brooks, my lawyer, her voice sharp with urgency. Jake, they're voting right now. Emergency board meeting. Get over there. I downed my coffee, heart slamming against my ribs. This was it, the endgame. I'm Jake Carter, the guy who turned off the lights on Lisa and Steve Larson's perfect little world to take back the 12 acres my granddad left me outside Pineville, North Carolina. If you stuck with me this far, hit that subscribe button. I'm about to tell you how it all wrapped up. Lisa's dream house still sat on my land, but the power was off, the HOA was in shambles, and residents were picking sides. I'd spent $38,000 on easement rights to pull this off, and now, with the law behind me and a judge's ruling in my pocket, I was one move from checkmate. I sped to the Willow Creek Community Center, gravel crunching under my tires. The parking lot was a zoo, cars everywhere, news vans circling like vultures. Inside, it was standing room only, the heat thick with sweat and anger. Steve Larson stood at the podium, his face gray, tie undone. We've got a proposal, he croaked, glancing at Paul Evans, their lawyer, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Lisa was MIA, word was she'd locked herself in her dark mansion, screaming at movers over a dying cell phone battery. Mary Ellis, the silver-haired firebrand who'd become my unexpected ally, stood up before Steve could finish. Let's hear it. But I've got a better idea, she said, her voice slicing through the noise. All eyes locked on her. The HOA buys Lisa's house at cost, $650,000. We dismantle it, not destroy it, and use the materials for the community center upgrade we've needed for years. The board members who greenlit this mess, Steve, Lisa, and their cronies, pay a special fee to cover the rest. Jake gets his land back, and we don't bankrupt the whole neighborhood. The room went dead silent, then erupted, half cheers, half shouts. Steve stammered, That's absurd, but Tom Reynolds, a burly guy from the back, cut him off. Absurd's you stealing land and thinking we'd let it slide. I stepped forward, pulse racing. I'll take it, I said, loud and clear. But I've got conditions. Sign it today, start dismantling tomorrow, and restore my property line with permanent markers. Oh, and I want an apology, public, from the board. Sarah nodded beside me, sliding the revised terms across the table. You've got no moves left, Steve. Sign, or the power stays off. The debate raged for hours, residents yelling, board members sweating. Across town, Lisa got the news via text from Brad. They're caving. She threw her phone against the wall, shattering it, as movers hauled her designer couch into a truck. Back at the meeting, Steve's shoulders slumped. He grabbed a pen, hands trembling, and signed. Paul followed, then the rest of the board, except Lisa, who'd resigned by proxy. Mary took the mic. As interim president, I'm sorry, Jake. We failed you and your granddad. The crowd clapped, some reluctantly, but it hit me hard, vindication, raw and real. By noon the next day, work crews rolled in. I watched from my rental as they labeled every piece of Lisa's house, windows for the center, cabinets for the clubhouse. Bill Harper stopped by, grinning. You did it, kid. They're replanting the sycamores next week. I choked up, picturing Granddad's woods coming back to life. That night, I called Mike at Duke Energy. Turn it on, I said. Lights flickered across Willow Creek, except Lisa's grid, where the dismantling hummed along. Weeks later, the house was gone, the land bare but healing. The HOA hired a native plant crew, oaks, maples, wildflowers sprouting where concrete once stood. Mary, now elected president, invited me to a ceremony. We're setting a conservation easement here, she said as volunteers dug holes for saplings. No one can touch this border again. I sold the easement rights back to the community for $38,000, with a catch. 5% of future HOA fees fund local land trusts. Steve showed up, humbled, and shook my hand. I underestimated you, he muttered. Most do, I replied, smiling. Lisa and Brad? They sold their other house and bolted to Florida, tails between their legs. The story hit local news. Channel 9 ran a segment. Pineville man wins land back from HOA. My phone buzzed with messages from strangers. You're a legend, Jake. I built a small bench in the woods after, overlooking the new growth. Sometimes I sit there, coffee in hand, watching birds dart between 8-foot saplings. It's not just about winning, it's about what came after. Granddad's land is breathing again, and that's worth every fight. So, what do you think? Drop a comment. Would you have cut the power, or played it differently? Subscribe if you want more stories like this. I'm Jake Carter, and this is how I took on an HOA Karen and won.